Good morning. I'm Joanne Wong, Director of Corporate Services at the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council. Thank you so much for taking the time today to participate in the How to Do Business with John Hancock webinar. So today we have Phil Hirsch, Supplier Diversity Officer, Gwendolyn McCoy, AVP, U.S. Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and Gaurav Sinai, Chief Procurement Officer, who will provide an overview of John Hancock's procurement and supplier diversity process. So first, I just want to begin by saying thank you so much, John Hancock, for being the official prize money sponsor for our annual Bears Den competition. I know our winner, Skygenic, was very appreciative of that. So again, thank you. And just a few housekeeping items before we begin. This session will be recorded and available on our YouTube page after the event. The presentation will also be shared with attendees at the conclusion of the event. Also, we have 3 presenters who will go through their slides and then also break for questions. So if you have any questions, please get them ready because we will be starting shortly. And since there are a large number of attendees, we will have question and answer at the conclusion of the presentation. Please leave those in the Q&A box and not the chat so we don't miss any. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Gwendolyn, Phil, and Gaurav.
Excellent.
Thank you, Joanne. So good morning, everyone. My name's Gwendolyn McCoy. And Joanne, are you going to be advancing the slides? Okay. So we're going to hop right in. I'm going to lay the groundwork for you in regards to why diversity is important to John Hancock. Oftentimes we start with the definitions, and the definitions being that diversity is all the ways, different ways that we are human. Those are the different dimensions in terms of race, ethnicity, gender, but also includes languages you speak, jobs you've had, the experiences that you've had in terms of military status, etc. In addition to that, we also have a definition for equity, equity being fair treatment, access and opportunity, and advancement for all. As you all know, we don't all start in the same place. So therefore, we have to make sure that we remove any barriers to success. And then lastly, when we belong and thrive and are recognized and leverage our difference, that's inclusion. So inclusion meaning that your voices are heard, that those dimensions of diversity, that experience that you bring to the table is valued and is, quite frankly, harnessed so that we can do better business. So in taking a look at some of the 2021 highlights for Manulife John Hancock, we were able to achieve our goal of 30% female representation at the VP plus level. Just to give you some context, last year there were commitments made and a $3.5 million pledge to help increase representation in the areas of BIPOC as well as female representation. So we were able to reach that goal in terms of the VP plus level. We also increased diverse slates for external positions. So generally what happens, you may have 1 or 2 people who may be on the diverse slate. And the chances of that person being hired, studies show, is very small. So we want to make sure that we cast as wide a net as we can, as well as be able to bring on those different dimensions of diversity. Yes, and increasing ELT direct involvement with ERGs. Yes, if you could just advance the slide, please. We are able to, we have a amazing group of volunteers within our organization that run our employee resource groups. And employee resource groups are those self-directed entities that help advance our culture by giving different affinity groups as well as their allies an opportunity to convene, learn about their experiences, as well as apply those experiences to the work that's being done. So we were able to have our executive leadership team play a more active role in what they are doing. In addition to that, we've added expertise and experience around DEI across the globe. So I joined John Hancock back in October of 2020, right in the midst of the pandemic. And the team has grown across the globe so that we're better able to address some of the DEI elements that we want to achieve within the firm. We also launched several DEI learning initiatives, such as a Day of Understanding program around anti-racism and ethnicity. And then we also had an afternoon of reflection. This afternoon of reflection, literally around the globe, we stopped what we were doing, had conversations around race and other dimensions of diversity across the globe. We had some moving speakers as well as engaged our employee resource groups to be able to make sure that they are heard and amplified for the work that they're doing. We also refreshed our ERG model so that it allowed us to better help and support that group so that they too will have a bigger platform as well as amplified voices, not only at the top of the house, but also throughout the business areas. We also evolved our program called the MLK Scholars Program. This program has gone on for quite a few years, and it allows high school students to get real life experience, job experience at the organization, as well as some of our nonprofit partners. So usually it's focused on the high school students. But now what we've done is we now have included alumni from the MLK Scholars Program that are now college students. And so we have now evolved them into our internship program because we know in order to be able to increase representation, we need to start early and often. So from high school to college, and hopefully they will choose to start their careers at John Hancock Manulife. And then last but not least, we've launched quite a few community partnerships with the $3.5 million commitment that I spoke about, including partnerships with Black Enterprise, Ceramont, which is also known as Working Mothers Magazine, and then the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business as well. So could you go on to the next page? So this is just a sampling of the employee resource groups around the globe that we have. In the US, we have 8 ERGs that, as I said before, they address some of the cultural aspects as well as different issues and challenges that some of these affinity groups may have. And just to point out a couple of them, we have the Ability ERG that is building a positive and inclusive work environment for those who are living with disability. Vibe is enabling our Black employees to advance professionally. And then Proud is our LGBTQ plus ERG, where the affinity plus their allies look to promote and full and unencumbered contribution to the company. So as you can see, these groups work as separate entities, but they also collaborate to recognize the intersectionality of all of these groups. So going on to the next page. So here we just wanted to highlight the different pillars. So we have a multi-year DEI strategy that started this year. And we have 4 pillars that we focus on. And so those pillars are people, culture, business, and community. So first with people, our goal is to increase representation of different dimensions of diversity. So those groups that I talked about earlier when I talked about the definition, we've recognized different dimensions of diversity that it makes better business because they bring different perspectives to the table. Next, we have culture. And with culture, our goal is to make sure that we create norms that welcome and leverage different. Oftentimes, the best way to be able to know about someone else or to know about a different experience is through storytelling and through additional conversation. So we have culture. Our culture is around training, around those forums that will able to increase that awareness. I'm going to skip business for now, but we're going to go on to community, which is providing financial resources and expertise to organizations focus on empowering underserved communities. We have focus areas within our community, which talks about well-being, anti-racism, as well as financial empowerment of underrepresented groups. And so we have a group that works together to make sure that we are moving toward those goals. And last but not least is our business pillar. So we look at reviewing processes and partnerships to ensure alignment of our DEI goals and our values. So we have a few actions that we've completed in this area, which include an inclusive language initiative, which makes sure that we use terms within our business that are not hurtful in any way. So some of the terms that you may encounter on a regular basis has history in slavery. So we have other words that we can use. So we have taken this year to increase awareness on that initiative. And then the following year, we're really going to activate searching and replacing those words. In addition to that, we're working with our distribution partners as well as our advisors to make sure that they too have their mind on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And last but certainly not least is our supplier diversity efforts and making sure that we provide opportunities for underrepresented groups to be able to build their business through our spend. And Phil and Gaurav are going to speak more about these efforts. So next slide. So I'm going to take a moment to take any questions that any of you may have in regards to our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts.
Thank you, Gwendolyn. We did have one question come in, and that question is John Hancock looking for any support with your DEI initiative?
And could they say a little bit more about help in regards to that?
So the person who asked this question, if you are able to provide a little bit more context, there's also the option to raise your hand, and I can take you off mute if that is something you're interested in. And while we wait, if there are any other questions for Gwendolyn, please pose them now in the Q&A box.
And while we're doing that, so just in general, we work very closely internally and externally throughout the firm to advance DEI. And so just to give you an example, most recently we had a campaign to solicit our employees to say, you know, we would love for you to be a part of these DEI efforts in whatever way you can. Because one thing that often happens with DEI, that it seems like it's a department that is housed in HR, and it's that thing over there. And what we try to do at John Hancock is not make diversity, equity, and inclusion a lane, but actually a lens. So it should be something that is across our entire business. And so having people in those business areas that have that lens is very helpful to us. So hope that answers your question, Antonio.
Oh, so
Thank you.
Antonio, okay, go ahead.
Do you want me to add anything, or is that?
Antonio, did that answer your question?
Well, I guess in a sense, yes and no. And I was looking more, you know, we've formed a team of 4 DEI consultants, and we're working with clients on training, you know, assessing what they're doing and developing strategies, and wondering whether those areas are any areas of need at John Hancock.
So what I'll say is this, is we have partnered with a few external organizations to lay some foundation around the work that we're doing. However, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn just to get more information about the work that you're doing.
Okay. Thank you so much. I will do that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we have one more question, and that is, what specific mechanisms or processes has the company put in place to make DEI happen among suppliers?
So I am going to leave that question to Phil in the next portion of the presentation, because he would be able to tell you more about what has happened within the area to support that.
Okay, perfect. So I think that is it for questions that, one more that's specific to you, Gwendolyn.
Okay.
Can you share the John Hancock DE&I goals for 2022 and how these are measured, percentage of overall spend or other, and what have been the previous year's DE&I measurements and goals?
So thank you for the question. In regards to our DEI goals, as I described, they're around people, culture, and community. With people, we look at KPIs that are related to increasing representation of underrepresented groups. And then with culture, you know, it shows itself more in a qualitative fashion right now, but in actuality, there are questions in our engagement survey that also helps to be able to see whether certain groups or certain areas have increased in level of engagement. Because when you start to talk about inclusion, that's when you can make that linkage to how engaged an employee is. And that linkage really manifests itself in the amount of discretionary effort that that employee will have for the organization, that level of commitment, so to speak. So we're able to measure, you know, from an HR standpoint, what those changes are. And with community in regards to our community spend, but we still have more work in terms of what it is that we need to measure in regards to all of these areas to make sure that we have those tangible results. And then again, I will leave the business one to when Phil has his conversation in regards to supplier diversity.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I believe we have Gaurav up next.
Yes. So first of all, thank you so much, Gwen, for your excellent update on our progress on DEI at the overall global level. And so much impact you have driven personally since you've been here with us. And it's incredible to see the amount of progress that we have made, you know, in the past year or so. So thank you.
Thank you.
everybody. Once again, thank you for your participation. My name is Gaurav Saini. I am a Chief Procurement Officer at Manulife John Hancock. Just want to give you a little context of who we are and what procurement is all about. And then a key leader, a senior leader within our group, Phil, will walk through some of the details around how we are building the supplier diversity program. First around John Hancock. Some of you may know, others may not, but John Hancock is actually part of a bigger parent company called Manulife. It's the largest, one of the largest insurance company in Canada. Globally, we are roughly about 38,000 people. And mainly, as you know, our products are life insurance, wealth management, as well as in Canada, we provide medical insurance, similar to some names that you recognize in US like Anthem and so on. In terms of procurement, we are a group of about 200 people. We manage about $3 billion of spend globally, and that's across 18,000 suppliers. And as we have been on this path for about 2 years or so now, supplier diversity is a core part of our strategy. And we'll walk through the actions and steps that we have taken. And I would have personally wished that, we all were doing it in person, because supplier diversity, one of the key ways to make it successful is to build one-on-one connections with the supplier community and providing them the opportunities. In terms of my journey, so prior to joining Manulife John Hancock in early 2020, right before the pandemic, like Gwen, I was Chief Procurement Officer at Morgan Stanley in New York, and for about 9 years. And there also, we built the supplier diversity program from over the 8 or 9 years, and very proud to say we had an excellent team like Phil here, and it took us a little time, and it is a slow journey, but we were able to get to about 6 to 7% of our spend being with diverse suppliers. That's like tier 1 and tier 2, and that's what we want to replicate here. Prior to that, I was a consultant with McKinsey for the most part. And, I am based out of our Boston office of John Hancock. I'm a mechanical engineer by education, and I grew up in Delhi in India. So that's a little bit about my professional journey. Why is this supplier diversity important to us? So there is the reasons that Gwen talked about. I think she explained some of our strategies as a company-wide and how we value DEI, and it is important for the business. I take a very practical view of supplier diversity. The fact is, we are operating in communities that have diverse suppliers. You are or will be our customers, hopefully, and continue to be our customers. And by having diverse suppliers in our business mix, we actually get much better offerings sometimes and have much better competition. And that's what we want to inculcate, and we want to continue to make progress on. So there's an economic benefit to that. And more importantly, I think having diverse suppliers, it provides an opportunity to build the local community. I myself, in some ways, consider myself diverse. I came from India, and things have worked out very well. I never owned a business on my own, and I've always been sort of in corporate environments. But I have family that have risen from the ranks and have owned small businesses and have done very well. And it was, if you hear their stories, it's programs like this in other bigger companies that gave them the opportunity. So there's a personal angle to this, because I know how hard it is to compete with when you are in the minority, how hard it is to prove yourself time and time again, and how hard it is to make yourself successful. So I'm very committed to this cause, and that's why I am very passionate about this topic. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Phil, who will walk through some of the specific program plans that we have and answer any questions. Phil, over to you.
Thanks, Gaurav. Good morning, everyone. Before I start, Joanne, if you could advance a few slides, that would be terrific. One more, right there. If you can back up one. Nope, wrong. One more up. There you go. Thank you. Okay, there must be a delay. One below the heading. Nope. Now we're going to go down two. Right there. Perfect.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Good morning. I think before I start, maybe I can tell you a little bit about myself. I've been with the company, I'm in my 20th year. And in case anybody is a little unsure when you're seeing the logo in Manulife John Hancock. So we are Manulife Financial, Toronto-based, a very, very large financial company. And we are John Hancock branded in the US, just in case anybody was wondering, looking at that logo. And I think, as most of you probably know, when we talk specifically supplier diversity, it's very much concentrated in the US, although I will say Canada is definitely getting a good footing as well, and they are growing their program. So like I said, I've been here 20 years. From day one, I've been in procurement. I've been fortunate enough to hold a number of different roles. And I would say I've been handling supplier diversity for at least 8 or 9 years. And it's really, though, Gaurav, he undersold the fact that we're really on a great path now because of him. Because when Gaurav took over, he realized the importance of this program, and we weren't doing all that we could, admittedly, and now we are on a path where our goal is to be a gold standard in the community and amongst our peers. I think I've covered all that. Gwen, thank you for your section this morning. One of the things that I realized when we were really committed to this, it really did make sense to partner with the right areas in the company, and DNI certainly, it's a marriage made in heaven. Gwen and I have become fast friends, and I appreciate everything that she is doing to help our momentum as well. We've also partnered with sustainability, and I actually have a team that I created that we have coverage both from DE&I, from sustainability, but also from HR, from marketing. So it's a nice complement to help us ultimately move our goal forward. And Gaurav mentioned advancement of supply diversity is now part of our procurement strategy. So next slide, please. So why we feel supply diversity program is good for our business. And this goes without saying the obvious, that it's just the right thing to do. But beyond that, supply diversity can be good for our bottom dollar. It improves competition and drives higher quality at comparable costs. Corporate reputation, greater brand awareness. It really does go hand in hand with the company values: share your humanity and do the right thing. It's aligned with growing company focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion and sustainability. And with a diverse supplier base, our reach is diversified through secondary marketing. Finally, diversity breeds innovation, and having diverse suppliers bring new and creative solutions for our supply chain needs. Next slide, Joanne. Thank you. So this is a little roadmap. It's of procurement's commitment to supplier diversity. This quote caught my attention, and I think supplier diversity really it captures it well. And if you strive for excellence, success will follow. And that's what we're trying to do with our supplier diversity program. So if you look at a snapshot back in 2020, prior to when Gurv came on board as our CPO, we had one person devoted to 10% of devoting 10% of the workload. It was a minimal budget, and basically also only allowing for minimal participation and travel. And we had 2 corporate partners. As we move through 2021, what was realized, especially when I was given this great opportunity to be full-time as a supplier diversity manager of the program, we needed to build our infrastructure to really set the stage. And we've done just that. We've done data enrichment within our own vendor base. We now have access to diverse vendor database. We're capturing tier 2 spend, which was something we never were able to do. And we also have external reporting support. Now, as I mentioned, one person, me, devoting 100% of my time. We added 4 new corporate partnerships, and we have a slide. I think it's a value to let you know all the different corporate partners that we are with. So that's a slide coming down. We are able now to do external sponsorships. I personally am involved in a number of mentorships with year-long commitments. And I've even had the pleasure of being a judge in a few different, I call it Shark Tank-like contests. Other things that are important to recognize is that we now have a devoted supplier. Gaurav? Oh, sorry. We now have a devoted supplier diversity page, and we'll talk more about that because that's important for you to understand where to go. That's key. We have added supplier diversity language to Manulife.com, which is our Canadian company up in Toronto. And we've now updated our RFX templates and procurement policy. We have an internal awareness program that is very much key. That's very much key, so that we are doing corporate partner forums where, again, partnering and really, laying the foundation, which I think we're in really good shape now. The next big step is basically the awareness within procurement, within the sourcing folk, all the way out to the people that make buying decisions within the company. And then lastly, I'm really proud. I thought I would just add this in. We've worked hard over the last year and a half to really bring our program to advance it to, we still have a way to go, but to advance it to where we know we're on a good journey. And I think we got validated by that. We just won the National Business Inclusion Consortium, where 2021 one of the best award, and we're pretty proud of that. So next slide, Joanne. So looking forward, so we now are at the point in the supplier diversity program where I really think the momentum is going to excel even more. So what's our vision and objectives? So first of all, we're embracing the supplier diversity program by increasing diverse supplier opportunities. What does that mean? So we will be including supplier diversity in category management's performance objectives. At least one diverse supplier will be in each RFP. We will also include diversity as a criteria in RFP evaluation. The bottom line, employ more diverse suppliers. And as Gaurav mentioned, we have a 3 to 5% spend target over the next 5 years. Now, how are we going to do that, which is the path to continued success? So first, we're going to bridge our business objectives with our sourcing team's objectives. And it's important to know the way we work internally. So we have a global procurement department, and we are pretty much we're at the point where any spend under procurement does come into procurement. We have a tool that those in the business come to, and they put their request in, and it starts a series of next steps. But it's important to know that unless it's a very, very large endeavor that procurement itself is running, most of the business comes from within the different areas of the company. So it's really it's a joint decision. It's a collaboration ultimately on what vendor is chosen from a bidding process. And that really is with procurement and the business owner. So it's on me. One of the things that I plan on doing, have been doing, but ramping up, is really to bring that awareness home to the business. Procurement is on board. And now it's time to get the business on board so that when the procurement and the business get together, it's already a foregone conclusion. Everybody understands the value of supplier diversity and wants to do as much as they can to get the diverse suppliers in. Continue proactively engaging the business, as I mentioned. And there are two ways I'm also doing this from behind the scenes. One is the general awareness that I just mentioned, but I also have the ability to monitor and identify upcoming expiring contracts and net new opportunities. So when I get that alert, that is my opportunity to reach out to the person that will be running that particular opportunity. And if they already aren't fully aware, it's my opportunity to get in front of them before the project moves too far. And lastly, increased inclusion of diverse vendors in the bidding process and being awarded business. Again, that's the ultimate goal. Next slide, Joanne. Thank you. So just a snapshot of our corporate memberships. So of course we have GNEMSDC. We have been a long-time partner with GNEMSDC. It's been a great partnership. Joanne and her team, they're terrific, and we really enjoy the partnership. We're also a member of Pacesetters, part of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce. In addition to that, we're members with Disability In, which their focus is on those persons that are disabled. NGLCC, the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Center for Women in Enterprise, of course, that's for women-owned businesses. NVBDC, which really is concentrating on veterans and disabled veterans. And lastly, CAMC. And CAMC is if you say what's a little different from the rest, it would be CAMC. So CAMC is the Canadian Aboriginal Minority Supplier Council. And CAMC is the first Canadian-based partnership that we actually have in the supplier diversity realm. Next slide. So how do we choose a supplier? And this is really the technical part of it. So like I mentioned, we have the business area and we have procurement. So the business area, their needs are determined, they get a budget approved, and then they put their request into our procurement intake tool. So that brings procurement into the fold. And then if there's an RFX, it can be a request for proposal, request for quote, or request for information. So meetings, demos, proof of concepts, vendor scorecards, all that good stuff, that happens under that step. And then when the business is picked, there becomes contract negotiations and ultimately the awarding of the business and vendor selection and then ongoing vendor management. So that's kind of the life cycle of how a need goes to a signed contract. Next slide, Joanne. So what do we look for in a supplier? I mean, there's a lot that we look for in a supplier, but these are just some of the attributes that we seek when evaluating a potential supplier. And of course, in the end, how you rank among all of these is basically it increases your chance of success. So integrity. We look for aligning with our value and culture, expertise, of course, delivery capabilities, innovation, excellence, reliability, value and cost savings, financial stability, and regulatory compliance. And I think I guess if there's a takeaway from here, that like any company, the job of procurement is to be efficient and cost efficient for sure. But as you can see, that is just one of many, many pieces. So I think it was a misnomer for a very long time, but unfortunately, it was kind of out there that to go with a diverse supplier, a lot of people thought it meant that you just had to pay more money, and we know that not to be true. So just what we're trying to do is we're trying to give every possible opportunity to have a really diverse supplier base. Next slide. And just a little bit about what we recognize for spend. So we do recognize tier 1 and tier 2 diverse suppliers. And we think that a tiered approach gives diverse suppliers actually the most opportunities to participate in our program. And just for clarity, so a tier 1 supplier, it's easy. It's what you think. It's when John Hancock engages with a supplier that is certified, be it by a body, a certification body, or self-certification that is diverse, and that will ultimately result in invoicing us for goods and services. But tier 2 is also something that we recognize. And that's when Gaurav mentioned, we're a very large company and we have a large vendor database. So the way we can capture tier 2 spend is when a non-diverse supplier on our behalf, be it if they use a third party for consulting, for manufacturing, whatever it is, that when a non-diverse supplier spends money with diverse businesses on our behalf. And this opens up the door for us to work with our non-diverse supplier base, also providing the awareness and the encouragement to make sure that when they work with vendors on our behalf, we expect diverse suppliers to be included in that opportunity as well. Next slide, Joanne. And so I thought it might be of interest. So when we look at our diversity spend, these are the 5 top areas right now. It doesn't mean it's a snapshot in time, but looking at the past year, it's business print, it's management consulting, it's paramedical, it's software. Oh, and that should say software as a service, sorry. Next slide. And again, I already mentioned this. You can tell we're very excited, but like I said, this is our first Supplier Diversity Award, and we hope the first of many, because that means that we are getting more diverse suppliers in the door. Next slide. And lastly, so we look forward to fighting the good fight together. And what can you do to stay connected? So first and foremost, go to johnhancock.com. You can just in the search button put supplier diversity, the supplier diversity page comes up, and there is an email link to register. We call it register, but it basically gives you a list of what we're looking for. It's important to do that. That immediately puts you in our database, and it goes in conjunction with the box next to the little snapshot of, it's a John Hancock snapshot. And for me, I always have to have a dog picture in there. So it just makes me smile when I look. But so events planned for 2022, we are planning to do a few meet and greets, maybe some mentoring sessions. So if you go and register, you will have your information, and anything we do, you'll be invited to. And lastly, again, I'm Phil Hirsch, and that is my contact email. Feel free to reach out. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Phil. So we do have some questions. So
Sure.
I'm just gonna start with these now. Let's see, I'm trying to remember which ones that I had asked. And so let me just start with this one. How can we register directly for an IT vendor contract?
To register directly for an IT contract, there right now, that isn't necessarily an option, but part of the information we get, we do ask that you, besides if you have a PowerPoint or anything visual that you want to add, we want to know the specific areas of expertise. And internally, we parse that out, and that information, because that information doesn't just sit with me. It goes on to our procurement folk, and I certainly don't want to bombard them with vendors that may never have the expertise of what they're looking for. So that is the way that we parse it out. So if you are IT of any way, shape, or form, it goes to the tower that handles IT. So there isn't a way for you to do it, but we make sure it gets done.
Okay. And you had mentioned this on this page. Do you offer any mentor protege programs for MBEs?
So I am involved in external mentorship partnerships currently, but for 2022, I do want to offer some where it's in the works. It is being planned. So I guess stay tuned. As soon as we have that locked down, that's, again, it goes back to, let's make sure we have your information.
Okay, great. Let's see. For staff augmentation, are you working with an MSP or multiple vendors?
We are working with an MSC.
And let's see. Someone added this to the chat. What ERP platform do you use?
That's a good question. I'm not quite sure. That's one I honestly don't have the answer.
Okay, great. Let's see. We are an IT software development for emerging technologies and a professional services company. Does John Hancock have any initiatives?
Well, we always have initiatives. I will say, because I sit within procurement and I go to team meetings, and I'm really like a one-off. I am strictly supplier diversity, and I'm sitting in the, I've never been sitting with the sourcing folk, and it makes sense. It's been a good thing because they're kind of my customers almost. So we're all connected, but the volume of business that they are constantly doing, there's always new opportunities. That's one thing I think is really very positive for everybody on the call. We are doing a lot of business. So, and that's hopefully going to translate to a lot of opportunity.
Okay, great. Let's see. Are there any opportunities with commercial office furniture from a certified MBE?
It's possible. We do have a real estate and a facilities category manager. So if that's your expertise, again, that it will make its way. And when opportunities come up, like I said, we now are going forward are requiring that diverse suppliers are included in every single bid that goes out. There's hopefully a good opportunity coming up.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a two-part question, so I'll just quickly read this. What are your, so in terms of a company having some difficulty working with John Hancock, since they're not a large consulting firm, what are your objectives in getting MBEs to participate in these large projects as a subcontractor? So are the large firms required as part of their contract to utilize diverse businesses?
So that goes to tier 2. And like I had mentioned, so we do regular vendor performance reviews. It gives us an opportunity to meet with the vendor to talk about what's gone well, what potentially hasn't, but also what our expectations are. And because we're really growing our program, I wouldn't say that's being done on a very regular basis, but that's one of our initiatives we do have that as an initiative to fix it. So that's where we will take the opportunity. If it's net new business, it will be captured, but we have a lot of vendors already standing. So in those vendor performance review, it's our opportunity to say, might not have mentioned this before, we have a very strong supply diversity program, and here are our expectations going forward. So that's how we're going to be addressing that.
Great. Do you ever struggle with not having a diverse supplier for any given RFP need or category? And how do you handle that? Are there exceptions?
So that's a really good question. And I would say that before we did struggle at times, but part of building our infrastructure, so we have multiple ways now to access really good, qualified, diverse vendors. Part of the corporate partnerships, we get to see that your database. So by being a corporate a diverse supplier with DNI STC, we know about you. And I can say that for other corporate partners, but past that, we really do look at all the registrations that come in, as we have on this page. And then the last thing we did was, I had mentioned we now have external help. We now have access to a diverse supplier database of over 1.3 million diverse vendors. And it's actually, it's called, so the database is called Supplier Explorer, and a Supplier IO. And I would say, if you are unfamiliar with Supplier IO, I would say reach out, and you can request on your behalf to get added to the John Hancock list. So I would recommend doing that. I wouldn't say that it's necessary that you might miss out on something, because we look at it as a whole. And I personally am going, I just think the vendors that have really kind of contacted us directly, be it through something like this, or coming to johnhancock.com, or through one of our corporate partners databases, that's where we look first. But if we don't find qualified there, we then would go out external. So supplier.io, that's another opportunity if you want to check it out.
What is your process with disability spend?
Well, so our process is the same with all spend. We right now we don't look at the different diverse classifications separately. As we're building the program, we are not necessarily telling or directing our sourcing folk and our contract managers in the business to start zoning in on any one specific diverse classification. At least for the moment, we just want to make sure we can supply a well-rounded, diverse grouping of qualified vendors. So we don't take it to a step where we haven't necessarily said, okay, well, we're looking for 5% women, we're not doing that. And again, we're growing this program. It was a huge growth spurt in 2021, 2022. We're looking for another one. And as things evolved, that could evolve as well. But right now, we don't call out any one specific classification.
Okay. One company is asking if it's possible to contact your MSP partner for IT staff augmentation opportunities. Is that something that can be shared?
It isn't. If there is a need, yeah, sorry, but the staff is so busy that if we open it up, for us, we don't have the manpower. But if you have done the right things and we are aware of you, again, if there's a need, you will be looked at.
Perfect. Okay. And then I know I asked this question earlier, and so wanted to bring that up again. So your DNI goals for 2022, how are they measured? Is it a percentage of overall spend? And would have been the previous year's DNI measurements and goals.
All right, so that is, if Gwen is still here, Gwen can take that.
And I think that was the question, Phil, that was about the spend for supplier diversity. That
Oh,
was my
not for
understanding.
DNI. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
So sorry about that. So
that's
Joanne,
okay.
can you tell me the question again? I thought it was on specifically on DE and I within the company.
So they did word it as D&I, and perhaps they meant supplier diversity specifically, but what are the goals for 2022? How are these measured? Is it the percentage of overall spend or something else? And what have been other previous years' measurements and goals?
Yeah. Okay, so if we're referring to supply diversity, so the goal for 2022 is to just be at least 1% higher than 2021. And 2021, because it was mostly a building year of our infrastructure, the actual act of bringing in business, we did have an increase, but that wasn't the main focus. It was making sure we had everything in place to really excel that for 2022. What I can tell you is, back in 2018, and again, this is where we had mentioned that the focus on this program was a world apart for what it is since GURV came in, was less than 1%. Certainly nothing to be proud of. We weren't, and that's part of the catalyst here. But we are on track. I feel comfortable with that 3 to 5% over 5 years. So again, next year we just want to be 1% higher.
And then this is the last question. Oh, nope. Okay. What is your, okay, so specifically, what are you looking for in the management consulting needs?
I have to defer that to the sourcing folk. I wish I knew, and I would love to know the specifics in each different category, but I don't.
Understood. All right. And then, oh, more questions. Okay. All right. Last couple minutes, everyone. So if you have questions, bring them in now. What's your approach for diverse talent on top of diverse spend?
I'm not sure. Diverse talent on top of, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay. So
So
let's skip.
I'll try to answer just in terms of talent. We have commitments that you can find on our website in regards to increasing representation of underrepresented groups. And we're going about it not only with our internal talent, but also our external talent, whether it's coming in early career. So we have the actuary program, and which is one example of many programs that we have, as well as our internal program. One of our most recent successes was having an underwriting development program that was focused on internal talent. So just making sure that we see representation on all levels of the firm. That's really our goal. And to Phil's earlier point, we're looking for improvement year after year. We've had some success around women and meeting that goal, but we want to also meet our BIPOC goals over time as well.
Okay, and then last question of the day, and this is, how will your schedule for meet and greets and other activities be publicized?
Well, publicized will be any diverse supplier that I have in my database, will be alerted, and we'll take it from there. Like I said, it's in the planning stage, but it's not going to be open public. Just in a public forum. It will be offered to the diverse suppliers that have either registered, we're already doing business with, or are associated with our corporate partners.
Okay, thank you. So we're at time. So I want to thank everyone for your time today. Thank you so much, Phil and Gwendolyn. And I know Gaurav hopped off, but we really appreciate your dedication to this good work. And your commitment to supplier diversity, and also your commitment to the Greater New England Council. So thank you again to everyone who participated. And as I mentioned, we will be sharing this presentation, and we will also have this recording up on our YouTube page, hopefully by the end of the day. So again, thank you and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, Joanne.